ladies and gentlemen. It is the middle of October. We are 3 weeks away from November 5th. Election day is coming. And we are going to look at the polls. We're going to look at Polymarket as well, even though we preface it all the time by saying it's not the best indicator. We're going to look at it and we're going to try and pick the bones. We're going to try and deduce what we can from Polymarket, but the polls are going to tell us most of the story today. Anyway, we are going to go over the safe states to start off with. Washington, probably going to be 17 points or so. Again, if you haven't checked our video on the margins of victory, make sure to go there, check that out. We have Oregon, which is also going to be above 10. Republicans talking about that being under 10. It's not going to be under 10. It's going to be over 10. It's going to be about 12, I think. California, again, Obama's been out campaigning, and this doesn't necessarily particularly relate to California, but it kind of does in a circled way. Anyway, Obama's been out campaigning with Harris. He's been saying black voters, you need to get out there. We'll get into Georgia, which is the biggest example of a failure with black turnout. But anyway, we look at a state like California, and she could start running up the numbers with black voters in California and still lose the election. She could maybe get to 4 in the national popular vote and still lose. So just keep that in mind. If she starts taking a big lead in the national polls, she may not actually be winning the election because, again, the 7 swing states are what matters. Anyway, Hawaii. Despite the poor reaction to the wildfires there 2 or so years ago, massively liberal state, perhaps the most liberal state up there with Vermont. So Democrats can kind of do no wrong there. It's not going to flip. There's no chance of it flipping. Maybe persistent ignorance, if Democratic leadership were in charge of Hawaii, could see the state slowly move to the right, maybe in the 2030s, but not anytime soon. It's not going to flip. It's going to stay deep blue. Colorado, probably around 10 points. You could put it as a likely state. You could put it as safe. I'm going to put it as safe because it's not really in contention. New Mexico's one that if the Harris campaign did implode, it could come into play. It's probably around 6 to 7 points at the moment. That's where the polling has it. Maybe it could be a little bit closer than that, but I don't think it's really in play. You have Nebraska 2nd District, which is going to be under 10 most likely. I wouldn't be surprised if it's over, but we're saying it's going to be over 5 for sure and under 10. Minnesota, this is another one that if the Harris campaign imploded, could start to come into play, and we did see it in play during the end of Biden's tenure as the candidate, but it's going to stay blue as things stand. Now we move on to Illinois, which is going to be around 14 points. There's no question that's staying blue. We have Virginia, which is actually going to be under 5 as we have it. It's going to be under 5 points. We are ahead of the curve on that one, I believe, because a lot of people are going to have it over, probably around 7, 8 points. We're going to have it probably at about 4. I think that's going to be if the outside of the 7 swing states. I think Virginia is the first one that would fall out of Democrat hands. Next, we can go to DC, of course, Maryland, Delaware. This is one that if the Harris campaign imploded and then majorly imploded, could come into play, but I really doubt it. New Jersey's the same. We have Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Vermont, Connecticut, and New Hampshire, which is going to be under 10. It's probably in the same kind of category as Minnesota, as a Virginia, in that it would flip, and a Maine at large as well, in that it would flip if things went really wrong for the Harris campaign, but it probably won't. We have Maine's 1st district, and we have New York, which is going to be safe Democrat. Next, we go to the Republican safe and likely states. And, we put Virginia in there as a lean, but it's not a swing state. So we'll go over these. These mountain states are always going to stay red. We have the Dakotas, Nebraska, of course, Kansas, Oklahoma, and these states down the middle of the country. We have Iowa, which will be under 10. But over 5 for sure. It's not really in play. We have Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, and Mississippi. These are all safe. Ohio is one that you could call likely rather than safe. I'm going to keep it as safe. I think it's going to run very close with Iowa, but I think Iowa will be 9, Ohio will be 10, or 10 and a half. So we'll put that as safe Republican. These two new strongholds for Republicans that we saw last time in 2020 go fairly deep red. I think they're going to slightly shift more red. We have Texas. Texas is a big talking point, perhaps the biggest single state talking point, because people in the Democrat Party think it could run under 5, and it's continued to shift left for a very long time now. But I don't think this is the year it flips. I don't think anyone really thinks that. I think they are keeping an eye on 2028 when they talk about this. But again, I don't think it's going to move to the left very much, if at all. I think this might be the end of that trend, although it may, it's kind of, it's one that's going to do its own thing. It's the same as Florida. They don't tend to run the same as the rest of the country, despite the poor Democrat, governing of the country. It's still going to do its own thing, and it may move left. Florida will move right, just like it did in 2020. We saw that when Trump was struggling with the, he had a very unfavorable response to COVID-19. He had a very unfavorable response to BLM, and Florida still moved right. And, we saw a poll that had Florida at plus 14 for Republicans. I don't know about that, but I think it will be closer to 10 points than it will be to 5. It's probably going to be about 9, to be honest. Maine 2nd District is going to lean, or be likely rather, to Republicans. And then we have Alaska, which will, as we have someone loading on to a Steam game, we have Alaska, which is going to lean, or be likely, again, likely to Republicans. I think it's going to move left. I don't think people are expecting it. I think it's going to slightly move left. It was only 10 points last time, exactly 10 points, or maybe 10.1. Oh no, Virginia was 10.1. Alaska was 10. I think both of these states are going to narrow, but I think Alaska will, you don't see a big black population there. That kind of was the big driving force behind the Democrat wipeout in the last election, and they still only won it narrowly. But Alaska, I think, will continue to move left and will be under 10 points. It's not going to be in play. It might be 9 points, it might be 8 points at best for Democrats. I don't think it's going to be in play. Alaska, anyway, is down there, alas. So we have our swing states. We can look at the polls quick. We have Florida plus 6. We have the Senate, which we talked about in a YouTube short. You can go ahead and check that one out. But we have Arizona, which is Trump by 5, according to New York Times Siena. That is going to be a slight outlier in these polls. Also, a thing to look out for when you're looking at polls, if you do look at polls yourself, is the overall accounted for percentages. We see that Trump is at 48.4 and Harris is at 47.4. That means that we, like this USA Today poll that's only at 90% in, that would mean that this is not completely reliable, because you're at 95.8% of the or the polling totals to that. So that means that realistically, you're not, if you're there's not many undecideds at this point. There's probably 0.5% undecided, true undecided voters, not people that are claiming to be undecided, but actual undecided voters. You look at the third party vote share, which maybe looked higher earlier in the process, but RFK has essentially dropped out. He's still on the ballot in a lot of states, but he's essentially dropped out. And he's basically telling people not to vote for him in certain states. You've got the Libertarian Party, who hate their own candidate, and he barely, I think he lost a couple of they have a weird system in that party, but he lost the first round, basically. And then he lost a couple rounds. Then you have the Green Party, which might hoover up 1%. But overall, you're probably looking at 1.5% overall that's not going to vote either way, or has not decided it's voting either way, of these parties. And again, Green Party, whatever they're polling at, maybe they're polling at 1.5 at the moment. They're not going to get 1.5. Let's say they were polling at that percentage, because what we see with third parties, and we definitely saw it with RFK because he was polling at like 10% at one point, is people park their votes with these people and then they realize they're not going to win. And come election day, they decide, well, I want to have an impact on the victor. And they vote for either of the Republican or Democrat Party. We see it every time with polling. We saw it in 2016 with Johnson. We saw it in 2016 with Stein. We saw it in 2024 with RFK. There was no way RFK was going to get anything above even 1%. I mean, maybe he gets 1%, but realistically, he wasn't even going to get above 2. So RFK and the third party vote share is going to be tiny. So just keep an eye on that to address the credibility of the overall polling. Anyway, we look at Arizona and we see that Trump leads in general. What liberal people and voters are coming out and saying is, well, there's not a lot of liberal polls coming out at the moment, which is kind of true. But there's a reason for that. If you're losing, you're not going to bring out many polls. Just like Rasmussen weren't polling as much as they were now compared to maybe a month or two ago because they were losing. And you're not going to poll if you're losing because it will either look bad on you when you're wrong or you're going to have to lie. So, and kind of cope yourself into it. But anyway, Arizona, I think, will lean Republican. I also think Georgia will. I think these are the two most likely Republican states. I also think North Carolina is in lean territory now. We had it at a tilt. Maybe we should have kept it in lean. I maintained for a long time that it was a lean rather than a tilt. And then I kind of gave in. I don't think I should have, because once this Atlas one drops out, Trump's going to have led every poll since the end of September. And you've got CNN at a tie. You've got these universities, and universities and colleges tend to be left leaning, and they have Trump leading or tie. You have Wall Street Journal, which had a tie. Quinnipiac has Trump, and this is what you want. You don't want a Nevada situation where Trump's leading in the average, but he's got 1+6 and he's losing pretty much every other poll. You don't want that, because that just means that you're leading by an outlier and you're kidding yourselves. So when you look at North Carolina, you're leading you want to lead every state by 10 points, but that's not going to happen. At this point, if you're leading a swing state and you're winning every poll by 1 or 2 points, this is perfect. This is where you want to be, because this shows that you have a sustainable and real lead in these states. Nevada, it's not real. It's an inflated lead. He's not leading because it's +6 and you've got 6 polls in here in total. So it's massively overinflated, this Wall Street Journal one. He's not leading by 6. There's no way he's leading by 6. You're just not seeing, for whatever reason, Harris get a lot in this poll. She's at 43. That's not real. So maybe, if her campaign were to blunder, that would occur, but I don't think that is real. And we can put Nevada as a lean. So, and again, Nevada's not really important for Republicans because it doesn't open any new paths to victory. It's really not. It would be a cherry on top. It really is not important. They don't need to be focusing on it, really. It would have to be, to open up a new path to victory, it would include, I think, Wisconsin. It might even be Michigan, which, if you're winning Michigan, you're sweeping the states. Or maybe with Nevada on the table. So, because Michigan is probably the second most likely to go Democrat. So, you really, Nevada's really not important for Republicans. They don't need to get too upset about not winning it and, well, you can't say that we're not winning because we're winning the averages. Well, you actually look into the averages, and it's not real. Wisconsin, we've been very outspoken on. We've had a lot of backlash. But once this Marquette one drops out, he's going to lead the average. Trump, that is. If he's leading Wisconsin, he's winning. We saw, and I'm not even talking about these polls from October, I'm talking about exit polls, 6 to 7 points underestimating in both years, in 2016 and 2020. So if he's leading the polls, he's probably leading the state big time. And I'm not even saying 6 to 7 point lead for Trump in the state. I'm saying even if it's 3 points, that's a lean margin. He's winning the state. I think he is winning the state. And I think he, therefore, wins the election. But we're not done yet. We've got Michigan. We can go over Michigan. He leads by 0.9. Again, this is why you can't just look at the averages. You kind of need to look into the state properly, because Michigan's not his second most likely state. There's no way. So we've got to look into this. We see and even, when this Bloomberg one drops out, it's going to be his most likely state. There's no way. Of course, things can shift over time, but I'm not sure about that. And the Atlas one will also drop out very soon. That's a +4, and that will bring it back, slightly down. Anyway, we have this Quinnipiac 1+4. This was a weird drop from Quinnipiac. Conservatives thought that this meant that Trump had basically won the election because a liberal pollster was putting him up by like 4 or 5 points in certain states, swing states. And it looked like the end. It looked like they were the turning point, and every other poll would follow their lead. That's not what's happened. Just a weird polling drop, and I think I kind of fell for it as well because you just don't really see this. It's a Liberal pollster, and they've kind of just gone completely right on all of their polls. Really unusual, and it's, it's 90. What is that? 98% in. So it's not even like it's a lot of undecideds like the Nevada one. It's just a weird poll, um, or a weird set of polls. I do think Trump leads Michigan. I'm not even going to lie on that one. I do think he leads Michigan. I think he leads it by a tilt. I think the momentum's with him at the moment, it seems, and therefore he's up there. But it's not a solid lead. It's not a lead like Arizona, Georgia, and maybe even North Carolina, which you're realistically not going to lose unless you do something majorly wrong to turn off voters. So he probably leads Michigan, to be honest. And then you look at Pennsylvania, the all important state. Once this Bloomberg one drops out, it's going to look very bleak for Harris because you had this +3 come in and it's narrowed the margin to point 0.1. But when this +5 drops out, it's going to be very bad. And you've also got a tie in there, which is making it close to Harris because obviously if Trump's leading and then you put a dead heat in there, it's going closer to Democrats. So you take that tie out, you're going to take a +3 out. That's a net win for Trump when these all fall out. And then he's going to lead the state by a slightly larger margin. It's not going to be major, but it will be, it might be point 0.4. We look at these polls. You've got Trafalgar, which have 93% in. This is a very sketchy poll, so we won't read too much into that one. 96.3 in across the state. That's not too bad. But again, you kind of probably want 97 if you're going to take real conclusions from it. Anyway, New York Times Siena +3 for Harris, but you look at TIPP, which is a objective pollster. You look at Insider Advantage, you look at which were very good last time in the last cycle. You look at Emerson, which are perhaps the most objective pollster. They have Trump +1. Again, it's you look at the sustainability from objective pollsters, +1, +2, +1 for Republicans. Trump probably leads Pennsylvania at a tilt. Again, I'm not going to call it a lean, and it's been tilt for probably 2.5 months now. But we're going to keep Pennsylvania at tilt. We will go over Polymarket quickly. So Trump's gone down in Polymarket. He still leads massively, and we can actually go over each state. He still leads Wisconsin. He still leads Michigan. He still leads Pennsylvania. He leads Georgia, and he leads Arizona. We went over it the other day by the biggest margin since Joe Biden was the nominee. We see Nevada, he's just slightly losing, but again, Republicans don't really need that state. And then you see North Carolina, he's leading again massively, and it looks like he's locking down North Carolina, locking down Georgia, locking down Arizona. And then you look at the map, and he only needs one of these Rust Belt states. Again, Wisconsin's running close. I think Wisconsin is actually the most likely. It all depends on whether you trust the polling in Wisconsin or not. I happen to not, and therefore I think he will win. But you look at Michigan, he's also probably leading Michigan, and if he's leading Michigan, he's leading Pennsylvania, and he probably is leading Pennsylvania. And Nevada, again, doesn't open any new paths to victory because he was at 262, and it would only put him at 268. You need 270 to win. It wouldn't do anything for him. Only if he got this second district in Nebraska, which he's not going to realistically. If he is, he's probably taking Virginia. So it's all interlinked. But and again, we see Harris leads 86% in the second district of Nebraska. So that is pretty much a done deal. Anyway, again, the popular vote, not completely important. The House is narrowing. The House was at 60% or so before. It's now at 55, so it's getting a lot closer. The Senate is a done deal, there's no question. And the presidency leans, or not quite leans yet, but it's tilting towards Trump. And again, we look at the presidential forecast, and October the 7th, I believe it was, or maybe it was the 8th. We can actually go down to a week, and we see that it was October 7th, and we saw Donald Trump with the Jewish. We actually talked about this in the last video, but we saw Donald Trump with the Jewish people. He wore a yarmulke, and he was with the Jewish people on October 7th, the day that Hamas invaded and massacred the Jewish people. And we see that, between the hours of 3 and 4, On this October 7th, Trump took out a massive lead, and ever since then, it's kind of been stretching out, and then maybe in the last day or so, it's slightly closed. But again, Donald Trump leads in Polymarket, Donald Trump leads in the polls, and Donald Trump leads in my estimation. But I'd be happy to hear you disagree. I'd be happy to hear your opinions. So, like, share, comment, and subscribe for the British perspective on American politics. And we'll be bringing you plenty of new content over the next month for election season. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.